I didn't know it was 9 o'clock. There's nothing on the calendar. That wasn't there.
Good morning.
Commissioner Merritt?
Good morning.
Okay.
So,
Suzanne,
do you have any
Suzanne was in it. It was Suzanne,
Arlington City Council?
Marsha, Vinny,
So tell them you can get
Suzanne,
tens of thousands of people to come to a parade by making people walk a mile and a half if it's for the Texas Rangers winning the World Series. But for a Veterans Day parade, people are not going to walk a mile and a half to go watch a fire truck and a mayor float. They got to put that in their
she was
neighborhood.
number 2 on it.
They got to put that in a place where people can get there.
I went to the receptionist for
And let's say it was a mile and a half route.
Oh, okay, so Ryan.
There weren't 600 people in a mile and a half. And it's because you can't get there. So when they do their July 4th parade, you can walk from your house. You can park anywhere. Like here, they had all these streets so blocked you couldn't get there.
Okay.
Like so,
I'll get the map.
it was just, it's where they did it's how they did the World Series one, which
Well, that was
people aren't going to show up for that.
No, it's
Okay.
We had received it yesterday, and so we
yeah.
applied for the program.
I wrote my own card.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say you should be on the
2015,
platform.
is when we started.
They had an Arlington platform.
Yeah, the mayor's
Program to receive it.
I was just going to go.
I don't even know that.
At all. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, we need to apply for the program. We all got together, had a good meeting.
Gary is
It was
15
in
minutes
3 or
out,
4,
so
whatever, 403.
Well, I got a resolution.
we can do that resolution.
Yeah, the FAQ, yeah, I wrote that down.
The sheriff has some meeting at 10 o'clock.
Yes.
He's
So,
asked for this to be moved up.
NFQHC.
Oh, that.
So
Yeah, I wrote that down.
Maybe that's it. We just
Yeah,
do
that's
the
right.
resolution and put him first.
Yeah, do the briefing.
Okay.
And that's money.
Gary's about
Go ahead and start.
Gary's 15 minutes out. Oh, so we're going to do the resolution.
Right.
Then the briefing.
And then we'll just take a
That
recess.
waiver.
Good morning. Welcome to the Tarrant County Commissioners Court special meeting on this Tuesday, November 12th. I now call the meeting to order.
Tim O'Hare, County Judge.
Present.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Elisa Simmons, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3. Manny Ramirez, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you very much. Today's invocation will be led by Chaplain Frank Lidke. Please rise for the invocation and pledges.
Shall we pray? Father, we're thankful for this time like this. We thank you for a country. We thank you for a state and a county that still recognizes you as an authority. We ask that you would bless this time. Scripture tells us that authorities are established by you. And Scripture also says that you would give us wisdom if we ask for it. So we ask for that. We ask that you give these leaders the wisdom they need for the task they do. We pray, Father, also for our officers, those on the street, those that are working in the jails, and the many other that have responsibilities, the sheriff and his staff. We pray for them and ask that you would lead and guide them, and may they follow you. So we thank you for this day. We pray your blessing on it, and I ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. All right, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. You may be seated. Do we have any announcements?
Just one quick announcement. Good morning, court members. Items 9D1 through D9 under the criminal district attorney's section, we're going to hold those items till after closed. I do believe we have some audience participation on those items should the court choose to hear those before we go into closed.
9D 1 through 9. Got it?
Correct.
Why?
Why what?
Are we holding them until after close?
For legal advice with regards to those items.
Okay.
Okay, do we have any announcements from the commissioners?
Yes, I would just like to thank everybody, all of the cities and organizations that invited me and had me out to their Veterans Day observances. I attended them from Mansfield to Arlington, and everything was beautiful. I also like to thank Judge Carr, Judge Salvant, and that team for inviting me to the Marine Corps birthday observance. So it's been a great past week of observing our veterans.
All right, any other announcements from the court?
Just congratulations to all of those who were elected to public office last week. The people have spoken, and we will have a new court.
Do we have any veterans in the audience? If so, would you please stand? One day late, but thank you for your service. Happy Veterans Day. And in honor of that, I believe, we have one resolution today. It's Veterans Awareness Week. Commissioner Ramirez.
Yeah, in the spirit of that, we have Jared Thompson with Tarrant County Veteran Services here to receive this proclamation. But this proclamation is honoring Veterans Awareness Week. Whereas it is appropriate to salute the tens of thousands of men and women who have served and are serving in America's armed forces, and whereas it is recognized that during the past century, hundreds of thousands of Americans have given their lives while serving in the armed forces, and whereas many Tarrant County employees are among the brave men and women who are serving in our armed forces, and whereas each November, Veterans Day is set aside as a time to honor those men and women who have served in the armed forces of the United States. And whereas the contributions and sacrifices of the men and women who served and are serving in the armed forces have been vital in maintaining the freedoms and way of life enjoyed by the people of the United States. And whereas while we can never hope to fully repay these courageous men and women for their distinguished service to our nation, we can and should show our appreciation for their sacrifice. And whereas Veterans Day is observed on November 12th, November 11th, regardless of what day of the week in which it falls, to preserve the historical significance of the date and to focus attention on the important purpose of Veterans Day, a celebration to honor America's veterans for their patriotism, love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby recognize the week of November 4th through the 8th, 2024, as Veterans Awareness Week, and extend our deepest gratitude and appreciation to the men and women who have served in our armed forces. In witness whereof we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 12th day of November 2024, and I move approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve that. Any discussion? All right, please cast your vote. All right, it passes unanimously, 4-0.
Thank you all very much. Let me present this.
Thank you. Okay, what we're going to do next is we're going to do the consent agenda, and then we're going to move up in the agenda the briefing on the item related to the sheriff's deal. So Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on consent? All right, seeing none, please cast your vote. All right, it passes unanimously. And now we will move up that briefing item, which is an update on the National Institute of Corrections report from the Tarrant County Sheriff's Office.
Good morning, Judge, Commissioners.
Good morning, Sheriff.
Happy Veterans Week, and you know, it's this generation I always worry about, will the next generation take up the gauntlet and continue on? And after what I saw yesterday at several events, our young people out there marching and celebrating Veterans Day, and young ROTC kids, and I was at Kennedale High School last night, and they had elementary kids. It was just amazing, and it just was quite inspiring that they'll do just fine. They will take it up and they'll do just fine. But thank you all for having me this morning. This is a great week to also celebrate this report that we received from the National Institute of Corrections and the DOJ. They were here on May 13th through 15th, reading those dates, but what I want to, I don't know, did I just say next?
You can, yes.
Okay, there we go. I was in Washington in February, and with all the concern about deaths in the jail, I approached the DOJ and National Institute of Corrections, and I said, tell me what all you do. And they said, we come, we inspect, we review, we suggest, we do all those things. And I said, sign me up. Tell me when you can come. And they said they were coming in May. And we had several meetings prior to that via Zoom and all these other things about what to plan for them to be received. And when they came, it's important to know that we just threw the doors open and said, tell us what you want. Tell us what records you want, what investigations you want to look into, whatever it is that you want, we want you to look at and even more. And so we began that. And also, just ironically, unbeknownst to us, at the very same time they showed up, Texas Commission on Jail Standards showed up for their no-notice inspection. So we had all these people in the jail, all these people. But a few of the highlights is first of all, who did they send? And they contract with a Pacific group called Falcon Group. And these are a group of subject matter experts on corrections from a variety of different areas. And even on them, they review and they manage. They've been in hundreds of jails across the nation and prisons, and they look at health care, they look at corrections, they look at mental health services and how they're doing. And as you can see there in that 1.5 million people that are incarcerated, that they were part of reviewing to make sure that their standards were being done. And to provide expertise to the government and the community and leaders, and this is a common thing in government, as you well know, to contract with experts. And so that's who the Falcon Group is. But also they were with, and I'll get to in a minute, is that the chief of NIC also showed up to lead the team personally. He was here on the ground. And I'll talk about him in a minute. Next. Yeah, strengths. Some of the things that they commended us on was, one, requesting and expediting the review so shortly after 3 deaths in custodies. And they gave us the option of even rescheduling. We said, no, come on. They appreciated the access they were giving, said it reflects the leadership within TCSO, and of course, the way we seek to treat incarcerated individuals as well as possible. They praised the relationship of our agency along with our partners, JPS and MHMR, calling our teams engaged and thoughtful. Next. The review team found that TCSO has engaged thoughtfully in a jail administration and clinical leadership staff. And I'll bring up the Kyrie Campbell case that was brought to y'all's attention, I believe, last May, that there was a lot of concerns about his housing and that it wasn't appropriate, or that he was in a cell and left to himself, and all those kind of things. When Chief Amos got on the ground here, I met with him in an initial briefing, and he shared with me that the Department of Justice had received somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 emails over Campbell in an orchestrated event. He said, I want to go see him now. So first thing he did was go to Campbell's cell, where he was being housed at an infirmary at the moment. And I said, here it is. You can talk to, review anything. He went inside the cell. He inspected the cell. He talked to Campbell. He talked to those that were taking care of him, and he found what we were doing well before any complaints were ever filed in this court or anything that was talked about, that our staff had already engaged in taking care of him and making sure he had the right food to eat. His cell was being cleaned 4 and 5 and 6 times a day by our people, that they were going in there. And they were seeing also the bond that was being created between certain correction officers and Kyrie, where they were able to control him and de-escalate him at the time that it was coming. They witnessed all that. They talked about all that. And they went on to talk about the solid, we talked about retention recruitment efforts by MHMR and JPS. And of course, it's a high priority with us, as you see, is that we had three recruiting events last week, 5 more this week. We're going to start also in a couple of other places. We've hired 108 detention officers this year so far, and we've got 25 in the academy. So those things are coming back, and law enforcement looks like something that some of these young people want to do. But one of the things that they looked for was they were noting how clean and odor-free the jail was. And if you visited other jails around the country, you will see that Tarrant County is one of the cleanest and jails that there is and odor-free. And they compared that. They physically told me that, is that after going in and out of jails, they said they couldn't believe how clean it was, and they specifically looked for those issues. And they were in every facility that we have. They walked every facility that we had. Again, they had full access. And they also recognized us for being progressive and serious about improving services and embracing best practices. Next. It's important to note that we pick up inmates from 54 police entities across the county and transport them to TCJC. They also recognize that we've booked in since 2017 over 350,000 inmates. That's 350,000 bookings since January 2017. Now, be completely transparent, some of those people are the same people being rebooked in because of recidivism. Now, during booking, they observed all of this, that the officers conducted continuity of care and notes where there was a mental health history. And after the booking, individuals had health screening, tested, fingerprinted, photographed, and issued housing assignments. And then any health or mental health issues, they promptly provided the provider. And they found that these intake screenings are timely and adequate. Timely and adequate. They had no recommendations at all to change what we were doing on that end of business. Next. They recognized JPS for their on-site medical staff who provided timely assessments for chronic care management. They provided care for specialties such as dialysis, radiology, OBGYN, orthopedics, infectious disease management, and which exceeds the national standards of care. For everybody's information, if you haven't seen it, for the public, we have 2 infirmaries inside the hospital and a full-time pharmacy that is conducting business. Our inmates have 24/7 availability for care. They can absolutely send from their tablet. All of them gets a tablet now, and they can send a kite in immediately, and they'll get a response fairly quickly. They also was very, very impressed with our pharmacy. And just as a matter of note, in 2023, we issued over 3.2 million pharmaceutical pills in our jail facility. It's a huge number. It's a huge number, and there has been no reports of mismanagement or issues with incorrect medicines being dispensed. We've had none of those. Tarrant County Jail has over 200 medical professionals in the jail. They noted that, 24/7, and somewhere below 100 MHMR. And of course, they're capable of treating anything from common cold to something that is acute. And we average about 5 ambulance rides a day out of our facility. And most days during the week, we're doing about 15 clinicals, which we are taking prisoners and taking to specialty clinicals, not only in Tarrant County. Some of them are not about it, but we go all the way to Dallas in some of these cases. So we go where the best treatment is that occurs. Next. They noted that we have possibly the lowest suicide rate in the state of major counties. That we've had 6 since 2017. In 2023 alone, our officers stopped and intervened 279 suicides. In 2024, we've intervened and stopped 350 suicides. I think that spells that we're advocates for our people, we're watching, we're doing our job. Also, what is heavily done here is the detention staff last year made 44,000 referrals to mental health. And what that means is that these are officers that are on duty that see something going on with somebody that wasn't right. And they are making the referrals to get them mental health attention. They do the same thing with medical, but we track the MHMR stuff. And it also goes as the custody and medical and mental health teams do a solid job of meeting the needs of incarcerated, and there's no significant backup of taking care. And talking about my partners, JPS and MHMR, just for a moment, is I believe JPS is one of the best hospitals in the United States of America. And people in their peer group have said that. And by the way, this court, especially you, Commissioner Brooks, have done a great job of making that the best. And that health care carries over to currently our county jail. In our MHMRs, we're going to see here in just a minute, if I can have the next one up. They believe that we have progressive practices and exceed national standards. Individuals who come into the facility are diagnosed with mental health issues and they are treated. And they are also set up for a 30-day resupply and doctor's referrals, and it's continuity of care if they leave the jail and go back into the community and make sure they have continuing care. We make sure all that happened. And last year in the state of Texas, 750 people throughout the entire state of Texas was restored to competency so they could stand trial. And no surprise to me, 430 of those were right here in Tarrant County Jail. That means it's absolutely more than Harris County, Dallas County, Bexar County, Travis County. Any of the majors, we led the way in that way. And our MHMR people are doing a great job in that arena. And we also noted up here that we have currently 32 people receiving services. Next. They did have some recommendations, and one of those was adding a lower level infirmary where that would take care of some of the less acute things, and so that's something that wouldn't require 24/7 nursing, but a lower level infirmary. Currently, right now, of course, that would just take funding and money to fix, right? But all inmates have access to health care for ailments as minor as the common cold or a headache. Our medical staff's available 24/7. The inmate doesn't have to ask anybody. He can hit a tab on his tablet, and it'll go right to them, and they'll get it, and they'll dispatch whatever they need, and they'll go assess them. And but they also talked about adding health assessments, that those are booked into jails, that maybe we come back 10 to 14 days later and do another health screening on everybody in jail. Well, again, that's a funding issue that takes additional medical staff and people to do that. But again, they have all access to medical personnel, and the average response time for medical emergencies in the jail is 90 seconds. Now, that's an ambulance response, basically, or people that have full ability to give life-saving support in 90 seconds. I don't believe you'll find that in any community other than our hidden city called jail. I'd also like to note on there that this would take increased funding, and this was one of the DOJ's deals, is one of the things that we're doing internally. Our own people, Lambert, our medical person, our medical RN correctional, is that she looks at everybody over the age of 40 that comes into the jail to regularly check on what they may need and what she might suggest that medical people look at. And so we are doing some of that advocacy work. Next. Detox protocol. JPS is doing that. It's well within national standards. What they ask is that maybe we do something a little bit different, that they be housed a little bit different, including more time out of their cell and maybe a more pleasant environment. You know, they wanted some murals on the wall and make it a pleasant environment. And, you know, my response to that is that we're a short-time facility, We meet all the national standards on detox, and we are the county jail. And what they're suggesting, I might argue, would be more appropriate for a rehab center or a hospital if they were in it. Detox is a very dangerous time. We know that. And the first 23 to 48 hours can be very serious. But JPS does a good job right now on that, in my opinion. And they are taking care of business there. Next. They talked about the natural lighting in the jail. And the LEC, when it was built, there were some issues there with some lighting. And of course, our current facility, the LEC came online in 2010. Current facility, the big one, TCC, was built and delivered in 1991. And that's when we opened the doors on it. And that facility is old. And it's probably got we've came a long way since then. You know, I mean, that was almost way prior to what we have jail standards are today. But it's still adequate. But, you know, we may look at ways to remodel it to help facilitate some of the things that they talked about. We don't have a plan on the table as of yet. But again, we just remind the public, we're short-term holding facility. Right now, the average stay for felony charges is 140 days, which is on a little bit of the higher side of most county jails. But we're doing good, except for Harris County. Next. Jail deaths. That's one of the reasons that I talked to them. And to bring some context to it is some things that happened in Tarrant County in its history. And in 2018, we implemented Criminal Code of Procedure 218, which the case law around it, the Attorney General's opinion, that out of 254 counties, we were the only ones that demanded that a case be filed and accepted by the DA before the prisoners are accepted. And I know for a fact, as a police chief, I held prisoners for 15 and 20 and 25 days in municipal jails. And that's not what the law was designed to do. The law says that the prisoner belongs to the sheriff once probable cause is determined that they should be held. So we simply started following the law. And I'm not criticizing those that came before me. I'm just saying that's what I saw, and that was a conscious issue. Now, what that does mean, too, is that as 2018 started, and we were doing that, then we were getting more people who needed to be detoxed. We were getting more people that were at risk early on, and some of the deaths that occurred in the jail did occur early on. But this is, these deaths were occurring, for instance, in Fort Worth's custody or Arlington's custody or Ulysses' custody. The death rate hasn't really changed. They were just dying someplace else, unfortunately. And we have markedly more services than a municipal jail in Azle, Texas. With all due respect to Azle, Texas, we have markedly more services that the state says that we're supposed to be providing to them. So that's also the reason for 218. But just to remind you, and we've said it several times, is how we compare to other major county jails in the state of Texas, and what is the cause of these deaths. Next. There's our jail capacity. 350,000 people booked in. We've passed certification just as a precursor ever since 1995. 50% of pre-existing conditions of those people booked in have chronic medical issues. 66% have mental health issues that we're booking in today. And in 1995, that was not the case. In 2017, that was not the case. In fact, in 2017, only 25% of the population had mental health issues. And today it's grown to 66 in the short 8 years. Next. And there's the death counts. You got Harris, Dallas, Barrett, Tarrant, Travis, and El Paso. And we noted that Tarrant in 2020, we led the state, unfortunately. 11 of those were COVID deaths. And at the same time, unfortunately, we lost those 11 people. I always want to remind you that we buried 6 of our own officers at that same time from the same thing, from the jail. That was a horrific time. But as you see across the state, there was different measures taken at different times across the state, and we did the best we could with what we had. But as you see right there, those numbers, we fall into number 3, where we're the 3rd largest county, and there we are. But we're trying to put some of these deaths in context. Next. So we've had 45 of those have been natural deaths. and to see what they were from: cardiac, cancer, HIV, that type of thing. Suicide. 6 suicides, 7 from toxicity, alcohol or drug issues. 3 were accidental, and some of those people had fallen off of top bunks with head injuries and fell out with head injuries, and unfortunately would have a brain bleed, and then 1 gunshot. And keep in mind, some of these people never entered the county jail. We took over at the hospital, and one of them right there, the gunshot, there was a gunfight in Arlington. They ended up shot several times. They got to the point where we took over the prisoner. In about 24 hours, he passed. Never set foot in jail. Some of the natural is at the first stop at medical. They observed that we had taken people right from that screening up to our infirmary and transferred to JPS, where they were at stage 4 cancer. They hadn't seen a doctor in years, and they were in stage 4 cancer, and of course they sign a DNR, but they're in there for a serious offense, like sexual assault of a child or murder, and there's not any judges that are going to let those people go. And they sign that DNR, and a few weeks later, I have a death in custody. But it's at the hospital. It's a hospital death. So you've seen some of those, and some of the people that on the other, 45 of them died from natural. The others some of them have died in the hospital as well. Some of the toxicity has died in the hospital. Accidental folks have died in the hospital. And of course, we've still got 1 pending out there of the cause of death from the medical examiner. And we have several of those are still under some type of investigation at some point. Next, mortality review. The DOJ reviewed our mortality, and they went through it. You can see they included an investigation of multiple law enforcement and legal agencies, but they also included separate reviews of committees inside our system. That'd be us and Tarrant County, our MHMR, and JPS. And they would do that. And one of the things that they were recommending is maybe include some of the boots on the ground that were involved somehow or another with this inmate. And we have no objection to that. It's probably a good idea. And but there were no recommendations or correction action on how we were reviewing deaths and how we were taking care of them. Next. Conclusion. We believe that we got a good partnership with MHMR and JPS. Several practices was noted that we exceed national standards of care. Some suggestions there that we certainly take to heart. The facilities were quiet and clean, as they said, which indicated good morale upon our prisoners. And requesting and expediting the review so shortly after 3 deaths in custody and facilitating the access, openness, and candor was exhibited during this process reflected the leadership within TCSO in a system that seeks to treat incarcerated individuals as well as possible. And during the final briefing, when they briefed out, they simply referred to this. They looked at me and said, "Sheriff, you have a Cadillac model of a jail." And I stand on that. I still believe it's one of the best jails in the nation. And I think that our people that operate that jail, our officers down there, do an incredible, noble job. And I believe that not only are they guardians of those inmates, that they are also advocates for those inmates, as you have seen of the referrals that we've made and the intervention in suicide. But that concludes the over-the-top recommendation that we have this online. We have the full report online, then anybody can access it.
Thank you, Sheriff. Questions from the court?
Sheriff, to what do you ascribe the tremendous rise in persons with mental health problems over, I think you said since 2017? It went from 25 to
66.
Yeah.
This is a phenomenon that's happening across America. I believe that this is absolutely, and based on my research and talking to the psychiatry world, it's drug driven. It's high THC level marijuanas. It is high, the toxicity of methamphetamines and fentanyl and heroin and even cocaine is, I believe this to be drug driven by all the evidence that I've seen. And I would venture to say the majority of sheriffs across the nation would agree with it because they're dealing with it in their jails. Talked to Sheriff Peter Bertusian, who is the sheriff of Middlesex, Massachusetts, way on the East Coast, and he says that his mental health issues are at 80% there, and so is his medical. But I asked him, what is the big difference seen? All of us agree it's the plethora of drugs that are available. And one of the first briefings I got as a sitting sheriff was, what is our mental health issue in the jail? And it was 25%. And at that time, we had 25 people incompetent to stand trial in 2017. Today, 66%. And incompetency is almost 150 and waiting for state beds. It's an incredible number. And it's a new frontier. And I got to tell you, as we had, the psychiatry world told me, it says, 10 years ago, mental health spectrum was about 2.5% to 3% of the nation's population. Today it's more like 7 or 8. And that's a scary thought. That's a lot of people. What are we going to do with them? What are we going to do with them? And I don't know the answers to that, to be quite honest. I know that if they're a danger to themselves or others, we've got to take action. But beyond that, it's going to be a huge scope for the entire nation to look at, because it's coming. It's not getting better.
Well, I compliment you for the high rate of return to competency inmates under very difficult situations. A county jail is not the best place to restore one's mental competency. But the fact is that there are not enough beds in the community at large to accept and treat those individuals and return them to competency. And at the same time, the fact that those individuals take up a large portion of the beds that are available in our community at large means that citizens who are not justice involved are not going to be able to have their needs met. It's a conundrum that every community in this nation probably is facing. But in Tarrant County, we pride ourselves on leading, and we've got to figure this out.
Well, we do, and I appreciate your words. Our mental MHMR is doing a great job. But you're right. If you had the LA County Sheriff standing here, you would hear the same information, or the Orange County Sheriff, or Miami. We compare notes all the time in that group, and everybody's in the same boat.
I don't generally speak to sheriffs from across the country because I don't have access to them, but I do speak to commissioners.
Yes, sir.
From across the country, from those places that you mentioned, LA County, Orange County. They are suffering from the same complexities in dealing with mental health, the mental health population. I would say that we need our state and federal partners to step up and be true partners with us in helping to solve these issues.
Absolutely.
I have a question about competency. So you said the 750 are restored to competency for trial. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What happens to those who are not restored to competency?
They are kept either in the county jail or they're kept in there's a few other facilities that they may go to, state bed, but that's where they're kept. And if it's decided that they're a danger to the mother, the themselves or others, that's where they're going to be kept until it happens. And some of that is forever. Unfortunately, some of it is forever. I mean, they're just past the point, as medically speaking, is what I'm told. And that we'll just have to care for them.
So you talked about the Kyrie Campbell case. And I think, but for the community interest in that case, he would still be there. How many other Kyrie Campbells are there? And I heard you just talk about the number of mental health cases.
I will tell you that there's something less than 150 over there that are incompetent to stand trial. And we're waiting on, all of them have been ordered to state jail beds. We have 2 that are in the hospital right now. I want to be careful here, but we have 2 that are in the hospital right now that are incompetent to stand trial, and one of them's been in the hospital for 200 days and one of them for 300 days in the hospital. And medically speaking, we don't have a lot of hope that they will be medically sound and mentally sound to stand trial.
Are they in the hospital, in the jail,
No,
or
ma'am.
at JPS?
John
Okay.
Peter Smith.
Okay.
John Peter Smith.
All right. So just for clarity, the NIC, National Institute of Corrections, and their consultant, the Falcon Group, visited the jail, correct? Not the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division.
Civil Rights Division wasn't here
Okay.
at that point.
All right. So I just wanted to clear that up because a lot of people said Department of Justice showed up and visited, and I said no, they did not. The Civil Rights Division is different. You know more than I. I've just been talking to them for at least a year since I've been here. So the Civil Rights Division is what I am interested in seeing. It comes in and opens an investigation. Is that correct? And they look at everything.
That's right. They had probable cause to believe there's some sort of malfeasance. That would be something that they would do. I will tell you that they have been kept in the loop. Alderman in the Department of Justice NIC has been here. They've been communicating with them, provided reports to them, and conversations. And I'll also share with you that I reiterated to the chief over that organization and had a conversation with him even after all the dust settled on this, and all the conversations surrounding the DOJ. And I said, what is your position? He said, there's absolutely no malfeasance at Tarrant County Jail.
Who did you speak to?
Chief of the NIC.
Oh, okay.
Who related that to the civil rights.
Okay. All right. I've had different conversations with the Civil Rights Division. So what I didn't hear a lot, what I did hear a lot of in this report was the positive work that's being done by JPS and MHMR in that jail. You touched on the deaths, the jail deaths.
Right.
So this team did not come in and to specifically review jail deaths.
That was part of what they reviewed, is they had access to all of that. They wanted to see how we handled deaths in custody.
Okay.
And so they did do part of that. And they also, they visited with corrections officers. They observed correction officers. They reviewed documents, past documents of, we were giving them huge notebooks at the request. They were given all that.
Okay. So while there are policies and practices in place at the jail across mental health, medical, and custody, there were several notable shortcomings. They were marked by inadequate observation levels and the conditions of reassessment. That's on page 17 of that NIC report. How will you address that?
Let me go to that report. This is on page 17.
Mm-hmm.
Suicide prevention and intervention. Yes, and this is one of the places that, quite frankly, they came in and looked and they talked about acronyms that MHMR uses and acronyms that we use. Inside the jail, they know what they're talking about.
Sure.
They're on the same page, number one. And number two is that one of the things that the DOJ folks that they reflected is that, hey, if you have somebody on suicide watch, the jail standard is 30 minutes to do a check. We'd like to see that done at 15. They were looking at jail standards and didn't look at our SOPs, because ever since I've been in office, we've been doing it every 10 minutes. And we have 2 suicide preventions that we do, and they didn't note that, they missed that SOP. We've told them verbally later, but is that the SOP is every 10 minutes. There's only 2 suicide watches that Tarrant County does. One is 24/7. If they're serious enough, we have a jailer that stands right in front of that door and observes that person 100% of the time. And the second one is every 10 minutes we check on them.
Okay. I think if we want to take something away from this visit and the report, it should be that they completely missed the illegality of the custody death investigations. The phrase "request for technical assistance" is peppered all over that report. And I think we need to be transparent about what this was, and that's why I wanted you to come today, and I appreciate you attending today. This did not address in custody deaths, death. The only way to get to an investigation that is what I think necessary is for the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division to come in and take a look at it. Kudos to MHMR, JPS for the work that they do in the jail, and kudos to your staff for keeping it clean and smelling great. But we do have a problem with in-custody deaths in this jail, and until we get honest about it, transparent about it, that's probably when we'll come to some solutions. I appreciate you coming.
Commissioner, let me make it clear. I have not been able to raise people from the dead. I don't have cancer cure pills. And somebody determined to commit suicide often completes it. Those things happen. Accident happens. But what this did show and what we did there's not inmates stabbing inmates. There's a lot of natural causes and a lot of mental health issues. But what I'm hearing you advocate for, the people that you just applauded, that you're advocating for a criminal investigation because something nefarious is going on. That's what the Civil Rights Division does. There's something nefarious going on. And if they show up, we'll throw the doors open for them. But I think it's going to be a waste of their time, and I think that's what they think too. But just for clarification, you're asking for a criminal investigation by the Department of Justice. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Sheriff, I've got a few.
Yes, sir.
Minor or less questions. I appreciate you coming here and addressing the court and laying out this report. I think it's important that we have federal partners, state partners that come in and check, not just once, but regularly. And I know Jail Standards does this, by surprise most of the time, but they come in and they do this, and time again, they give you positive feedback and say you're doing a great job. The report did highlight, and I like the statistics. Every time we have numbers and comparables, that's important. Looking at the statistics, because sometimes we get lost in the trees and we don't see the forest. But the fact of the matter is, we perform as far as keeping our inmates safe better than our closest peer when it comes to population, which is Bear. And on the suicide preventions, that's one thing. I've talked to the commissioners down in Bear. I've talked to them, and they can't wrap their hands around why they have so many suicides. And they have an independent jail administrator that operates their jail, and it's such a unique challenge. But what I've seen over the past couple of months, and it was after and before this report, is that there is a focus in the sheriff's office on continual improvement. We know that where we're performing, but also looking at transparency and communications and trying to bring in new best practices and policies. I watch those numbers of hiring and recruiting like a hawk. And I'll tell you, now we're making a dent.
Yep.
Whereas we used to see 250, 220, 200 week after week, now it's 180, 170, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, 160, 150 in our vacancy numbers. And so we're making a dent there, and I think that relieves pressure on the system overall.
I do too.
You know, I think when we point to the latest tragic incidents that happened, culturally, whenever you have 250 vacancies and everybody's working 60 hours a week, and these folks are stressed out, and I mean, their mental health of our jailers needs to be a concern of ours also. I think that you're continually looking at ways, from what you've told me, to make sure we address that and to get better. So, you know, I know that the instinct, anytime that there's something that appears off, is to cast stones. I don't think that that's appropriate. I think what we ought to do is provide every resource that we can to improve if we think there's an issue. But also, if we believe that we're performing well amongst our peer counties, we have to stand up and say that. So ultimately, I appreciate you being here. You don't have to. And I welcome the communication, and every time we have a performance review like this from the federal government or from the state government, that I would welcome come in and have a review about it, because ultimately, you know, probably 90% of the things in that report, nobody's heard over the last year. 90% of that report showing how many calls, and I'll say calls, that our jailers have to go on every single day, whether it's responding to mental health crisis or medical emergencies. It's incredible whenever you actually dilute it down and look at the numbers. And you have our commitment that when it comes to legislation, in this legislative session, in the federal government, whatever we need to happen. You saw 2620 last year, or last session, to try to alleviate some of the population concerns. Maybe my time is up.
Thank you. Thank you, that'll be all.
That's my 3 minutes. Oh, but I'll say this.
How's that feel?
Whenever we, yes, hey, I'm good with it. Whenever we look at legislation, maybe it's reforms to 218, so that perhaps there's some sharing mechanism. But I'll say this, we've had conversations with all of our municipal partners.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the focus there too is to help alleviate some of our problems, because you've said it to me before, our population is growing, and we can all hope and pray that we don't need a county jail someday, and that one day nobody's in jail, but crime happens. There are people out there that are set to commit crimes and victimize our community, and it will always be a problem. It's been a problem since the beginning. And so we have to prepare for that and be forward-looking. So again, any resources that we can provide to get better, any resources that we can provide to continue to be a model agency, whether it's training, whether it's facilities, whatever it is, don't be hesitant to ask.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A couple of things. Commissioner, I too am concerned about our staff and what they have to endure. Mental health does impact them too. Family, work-life balance impacts them too. So that is a part of my problem with this report being deemed an investigation by the Department of Justice, because the Department of Justice didn't come in and look at all of that. They didn't look at the Sandra Bland law violations that occur in this jail. And so not to cast stones, the aim I think all of our aim is to have the best jail facility, the best sheriff's office operation possible, and for us to be able to support you in those efforts. And so I think transparency helps. Commissioner Ramirez apparently has a lot more access to you than I do, and so that's okay, I guess. But there are a number of issues that were not addressed here.
So, Sheriff, go ahead.
I just wanted to encourage this court. The last legislative session, one of the key items for this court was to request that the state start the process of establishing a state mental health hospital for Tarrant County. We didn't quite get there the last session, but the discussions around that issue were good, and I would hope that we would include that in our legislative priorities for the next legislative session and see if we cannot make additional progress toward that issue. That's what's going to relieve the pressure on our county jail in terms of treating so many persons with mental health issues in an in-custody situation rather than in a treatment environment.
I think that's a good point, and it's worth remembering, the sheriff, constitutionally, he's got no decision as to whether or not he accepts that prisoner or not.
Absolutely.
He doesn't make the call whether he's the appropriate agency to provide service to this person. He can't decide because somebody's mentally ill that he doesn't want. He can't make that call. Or if someone's infirm or if somebody's going to the hospital, they're in the sheriff's custody.
The answer is to make sure that there are additional resources in our community to be able to handle that population so that the county jail is not the default institution to handle that problem.
Thank you for your comments about that issue. While we will take on a legislative agenda that we vote on in January, my office will be preparing before January a resolution for the court's consideration on that one issue, which is a mental health facility for Tarrant County. Or, we'll get into that resolution later. I've spoken to multiple legislators, senators, House members about this very issue, and the possibility also exists that they can add on to another location, but it's designated for Tarrant County. So we'll be bringing a resolution. I would expect that to be the first meeting of December.
I think that's very important, Judge. Thank you.
Sheriff, thank you for your time. Thank you for the work you're doing to bring those numbers down on officers. So I've noticed they are coming down, and that's great work, and we're fortunate to have you continuing in your role. Thank you. Okay, we do have some comments, some speakers on this. First is Julie Griffin. Following Ms. Griffin is Reed Bills.
Good morning. I'd like to share some items from the NIC report. Number one is implied a systemic failure of adequate communication protocols between TCSO, MHMR, and JPS staff to ensure proper and comprehensive provision of medical and mental health care to the incarcerated persons at our jail. The two-provider dynamic, it says, JPS and MHMR, quote, requires establishment and maintenance of a coordinated communication strategy. It is recommended that standing meetings at all levels between MHMR and JPS be established and adhered to as a means of addressing individual cases of concern and coordinating approaches to processes such as suicide watch and reduced food intake, page 13. 2, the overuse of single-cell confinement is a policy for addressing mental health and detox care. Quote, the individuals in such housing units are confined to their cells for 23 hours daily. This level of confinement for any individual is detrimental to their mental and physical health, unquote, page 9. 3, the lack of group and one-on-one therapy for confined persons with mental health needs. Quote, there are no true caseloads in place for individual services that are driven by individual patient needs, page 20. 4, quote, it does not seem to be the case that an adequate mental health assessment is conducted for all admitted individuals within 14 days, unquote, page 16. 5, the lack of basic environmental, visual, and healing support such as lighting, plants, artwork, and staff adequate break facilities. And they say in an understatement that, quote, unfortunately, this environment does not reinforce a culture of rehabilitation and humane treatment and is unlikely to foster a feeling of humanity and rehabilitation, page 12. 6, regarding monitoring those incarcerated persons identified as potentially suicidal, quote, the observation logs were not made available to the TA team for review, unquote, and, quote, the TA team infers that the use of one-to-one or constant observation is rare. These practices do not meet the National Commission on Correctional Healthcare standards on monitoring, that's page 17 to 18. Regarding privacy of care, this is number 7. Quote, the TA review team's observations and interviews noted that MHMR staff do not typically reassess incarcerated individuals outside of their cells. This does not lend itself to an open and full opportunity to spend optimal time in understanding risk and protective factors, page 18. 8, regarding culture, quote, MHMR staff seem to operate within the perceived limits of custody operations. It is recommended that MHMR develop more of an advocacy role, page 26. Finally, the authors of the report note that Tarrant County Sheriff's Office has not pursued National Commission on Correctional Health Care accreditation, despite the fact that, quote, the industry generally accepts NCCHC standards as the prevailing framework for correctional health and mental health care. My query, why hasn't it?
Thank you.
Certainly,
Your
this
time
would
is
be a
up.
welcome and effective means for improving.
Ms. Bills is next. Following Ms. Bills, Doreen Geiger.
Please note that the site report that the sheriff reviewed for us was funded by the national, was not, and funded, but was sorry, let me go back, redo this, I'm misreading it. Please note that the site visit report was requested by the sheriff and funded by the National Institute of Corrections, not the U.S. Department of Justice. A disclaimer at the beginning of the report notes that points of view or opinions stated in this document are those of the authors and do not necessarily represent the official position or policies of the U.S. Department of Justice. In other words, this report is not an investigation, and it is not related to the May 2023 request to the Department of Justice for an investigation into the deaths in the county jails. Nonetheless, the findings are significant. 3 pages of recommendations follow the section on inmates with behavioral and mental health issues, especially those requiring suicide prevention measures. The writers conclude that the greatest concern and area for improvement is related to the restrictive conditions of confinement for those identified as having significant assessment and treatment needs, such as those at risk for suicide, those detoxing, and those on a mental health recommended single cell status. They added that people placed in single cells because of mental health concerns or people who are detoxing are confined for 23 hours a day. Many alternatives to solitary confinement are suggested. I hope the sheriff takes the suggestions made by the NIC consultants. They are intended to improve the situation in our county jails. Meanwhile, the DOJ investigation should proceed to conclusion.
Following Ms. Geiger, we have Harriet Harrell.
It is important to clarify that the review of the Tarrant County Sheriff's Jail was not done by the DOJ. It was by the National Institute of Corrections using their Falcon group. None of the NIC employees involved in the review of this jail are DOJ employees. The sheriff noted that the NIC report identified corrections needed in the jail. An advantage of having any review of any institution is to identify the areas that need improvement and to put in place plans to help make those improvements happen. I hope the sheriff will make the needed corrections and improvements his priority and will report back to this court. I am very encouraged, Judge O'Hare, that this county is going to pursue, like it did 2 years ago, to try to get a mental health hospital in Tarrant County. We need it really badly. Thank you.
Thank you. Following Ms. Harrell, we have Geraldine Jackie Cox.
Judge, I didn't realize the meeting started at 9, so I missed the sheriff's briefing, but I will watch it and speak next time.
Okay. Ms. Cox. Is she here? No. Okay, we're going to take a brief recess. We will meet back in here at exactly 10:12. Okay. Okay. All right, we're back from recess. We will now continue with the meeting, starting with 9A1, consideration of American Rescue Act, fiscal recovery fund budget adjustments.
Move for approval.
Second. Do we have any discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, please cast your vote. Gary, you're not voted yet.
Yeah.
All right, everything in? All right, passes unanimously. Next up, budget and risk management, discussion possible action related to fiscal year 2025 appropriation adjustments.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion there? All right, please cast your vote. Passes unanimously. Items D1 through 9 are held, but we have some speakers, so we'll call on them now. Dr. Harrell is first. Charles Bills is second.
In the time that Sheriff Wayburn has been in office, Tarrant County has paid out $3.5 million to families whose loved ones died in the jail under questionable circumstances. We remember Dean Stewart, Javante Myers, Corey Rodriguez, Chastity Conjus, Georgia Kay. For those of you who prioritize saving the county money, and really that's all of us, this has gotten way out of hand. And now we face a lawsuit brought by Anthony Johnson's family because Anthony Johnson's death was ruled a homicide in our jail. You're going to be voting on 9 proposals to hire law firms to defend this lawsuit. The best way to control costs here is to step back and seriously commit to a mediation process to respect this family's grief, to acknowledge that Tarrant County does owe reparation to Mr. Johnson's family, and to steward the county's resources responsibly. Mediation allows all of that. Going to a trial does not. Thank you.
Thank you. Following Mr. Bills, we have Julie Griffin.
I'm here pretty much to repeat what she just said, that we should just mediate this and get this over with as quickly as possible. I'm pretty sure the law says that all these employees are required to have outside counsel. I don't know if they are personally liable or if the county is, if they are found liable. But if that's the case, then then it probably would be easier just to add them to the. Well, I'm not sure I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know enough about that to speak on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Following Ms. Griffin, we have Reed Bills.
Good morning. Regarding hiring outside counsel to represent co-defendant jailer employees of the Tarrant County Jail. The cost appears enormous. I mean, in all, there's going to be 15 defendants here. Is the county going to litigate fully the case of the homicide of Anthony J. Johnson Jr.? at the hands of grossly mismanaged jail staff, which the whole world has seen on video. I think it's time perhaps right now to show good faith to the family and to the community and to the pocketbook of the county by seeking mediation toward a settlement. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bills.
At a time when the county has expressed a desire to save taxpayers' money by cutting the 2025 budget, and have done so by eliminating most, if not all, of the social services funded by the county, you are asking for $370,000 to hire outside counsel to represent you and your employees in a civil suit brought by the Johnson family against the county jail. This will be spent in addition to the salaries already being paid to the civil district attorneys. These salaries are paid for the purpose of providing representation when the county requires their services, as in this situation. They should already be working on attempting mediation to resolve this case. The money saved should be spent on restoring funding for the very social services that will help prevent a need for compensating inmates who have been abused by the jail system in the future. For instance, the MHMR jail diversion program and the juvenile rehabilitation services you have removed from the budget. It is time to get your priorities in order.
Okay, I want to make a couple comments about this. My recommendation for my colleagues is that we hold off on hiring outside counsel and use our resources to get to mediation. And our resources include the district attorney's office. We have a civil division that has staff that should be mediating this case. And until we exhaust that effort, I think we should not be spending taxpayer dollars when we have essentially the county's law firm, which is the district attorney's office. If we hire an outside firm, the first thing they are going to do is mediate. So why can't we mediate in-house with our district attorney's office? Are we saying the competency level is not there? It doesn't make sense. We need to get this case resolved pre-suit. The bottom line is that we've all watched that video. All of you have seen that video. Those jailers stood around and did nothing. 2 of them have been terminated. We know, we saw what happened. And so, as quickly as we can, this district attorney's office needs to get to mediation, not an outside firm. Not yet. I'm not saying it won't come to that. But we need to see if we can at least try to get to a number or see how far apart we are. So those are my comments.
Okay. Items 2 through 9 are required. You cannot use in-house lawyers due to conflict of interest issues. Only item 1
That's
is
how I was speaking
one
to.
that is up for debate. So, okay, that's it for those for now. which now moves us to item E1, consideration of a waiver of terminal benefits, human resources.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All right, please cast your vote. All right, passes unanimously. Next item, E2, consideration of a waiver of terminal benefits, juvenile services.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second there. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, please cast your vote. All right, passes unanimously. Thank you. Next up is item H1, purchasing an RFP construction manager at risk for the plaza building garage expansion.
We are asking for recommendation for award and also contract approval.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item H1. Any discussion? Please cast your vote. Passes unanimously. Next up, item H2, an RFP regarding the Law Enforcement Training Center renovation facilities management construction services.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion there? Yeah, I'll take care of that. Thank you. Any discussion on the court? All right, seeing none, we do have one speaker, Ms. Hanratty.
Thank you. I am disgusted that $15.7 million in ARPA funds allocated by the previous commissioner's court to desperately needed low-income housing is being spent to rehabilitate the existing county training center when other facilities are available. Detention officer training is important, and at least the specialized part, from what I could see, is not offered by either the COG or TCC. So there is that thing, and so we do need training, but I would think we would want to work with those entities to provide training for the whole county, because this is an issue for not just our county, but other jails as well. The other thing is that this training, obviously, if 66% of our jail population has mental illness, we need to be providing training to our detention officers now. It'll take a while to get the rehab done, and it seems to be critical, and it seems to be needed for all our officers. They can't be expected to handle people that they've never expected to handle. But the training will not be effective unless and until the sheriff's office updates its procedures for dealing with difficult detainees like Anthony Johnson, especially those with mental illness. And that also covers the people who died from dehydration, 3 of them. We have lost way too many detainees in the last 4 years, and the cost to the families who have lost loved ones and to the county taxpayers for funding outside lawyers and ever-increasing settlements keeps growing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just have a comment. I'll say that we all look for solutions to problems. And I'll say culture, training, they go hand in hand. And the Law Enforcement Training Center is a critical piece in making sure that we have a world-class agency. We owe it to the men and women that do the job to give them the best resources, tools possible to do what we ask them to do with. And this training center is not just for new hires, it's for continuing education so that we can attract and retain high-quality instructors and instruction as well. I think this is a critical step in making sure that we have a world-class agency, and I couldn't be more proud of this court for taking the steps to make sure it's a reality. So, those are my comments.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, please cast your vote. All right, it passes unanimously. All right, next we have board and commission appointments. Do we have any appointments to be made? All right, seeing none, we will move to public comments. I have Carla Palomares and Geraldine Jackie Cox. Is Miss Palomares here? All right, Miss Cox. She's not here either. Oh, you are here.
Yeah.
Okay, you made it.
today deal with the problems of transparency from our sheriff's department and from our problems with getting compliance with requirements of law that members of families be allowed to have copies of autopsy reports. So I dedicate these remarks to those families who are still denied access to autopsy reports that they wish to see concerning their loved ones. I want to start with a reference to the part of law that requires that the county jail have an independent investigation into every death that occurs in the jail. That's Texas Government Code Section 511.021. It requires that the Jail Standards Commission appoint someone, an independent law enforcement agency, to investigate every death. The Jail Standards Commission delegated that responsibility back to the sheriffs. That's kind of a problem, because if what was required was an independent investigation into an operation run by the sheriffs, and if you point the sheriffs to be in charge, sheriffs may not do a very good job with it. Our sheriff appointed a part of the city police department that is so overwhelmed and behind in its work that there are now 900 rape kit investigations behind, and there is no indication whatsoever that they're really working on these cases that are referred to them, because they show up as investigators in cases that are as much as 2 years old. So if you want to send something to a grave, which it seems to be what our sheriff does, you send it to an investigator whom you know you won't show up. But I brought good news out to you. The letter from Jail Standards Commission, which it delegates to the county sheriff the duty to conduct an independent investigation. Okay? And it says, effective January 1st, 2018, that was some years ago, was it not? Custodial death investigations shall be conducted by agencies other than the local law enforcement agency that operates the county jail. And the rule says, all deaths shall be investigated by another law enforcement agency or entity, such as the Texas Rangers, DA's office, medical examiner's office, local PD, as long as no conflicts of interest
Thank you.
exist. Thank you.
All right, that's all the public comments we have. Any announcements or comments from the court? All right, for those who are unaware, which may be none of you, the National Institute of Corrections is an agency of the U.S. Department of Justice. It is headed by a director appointed by the U.S. Attorney General. All right, if there are no comments other from commissioners, the Commissioner Court will now recess the open session and proceed to closed session to discuss items exempt under sections 551071, 072, 074, 076, 087, and 0725 of the Texas Government Code. We are now in recess. The little Santa thing, if it's dark or light, it actually has a Santa reindeer that lights on the wall. So,
Where's Gary?
oh. Is it, I am assuming that you would not make a motion naming a specific person.
I don't think the motion calls for that, sir.
Yeah.
We were just asking for approval for going to execute an agreement.
Gotcha. All right, are we live?
We're ready when you are, sir.
Okay. All right, we're back from executive session, a brief executive session. There's one possible action to take. I will make a motion that we approve items D1 through 9.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on those items. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, please cast your vote. All right, it passes 4-1. There's no more business to address at the moment, so we are now adjourned.